You picked a great day to join us. It's Monday here in the nation's capital. Welcome in, everyone. Thanks for making us, as always, a part of your day. Our guest this time has served in public office for 9 years and a day. She's in her 10th year of public service, sworn in to the Ward 4 seat on the D.C. Council May 1, 2007. She is now halfway through her second year as mayor of the District of Columbia. Muriel Bowser, a hometown girl.
Yes.
Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks very much for your time. I imagine if you're the mayor, the hardest thing to do, one of the hardest things to do, is to schedule a Sunday brunch with friends with the hope that you'll actually get to the restaurant to sit down and enjoy a little time. Yesterday, one of those times where the phone rings and it's news that you as mayor must attend to along with your public safety team.
Sure.
Metro, big impact as well. Can you tell us what's the latest on why CSX cars toppled? And what the potential danger to residents was in terms of hazardous materials spilling?
Sure. Well, I can't tell you what the cause is. That is currently being investigated by the Federal Rail Administration, who will have the responsibility for determining cause. I can tell you that our first responders were there on the scene, secured the scene, secured the contents of what was on those that freight train that was on the CSX lines, and assisted CSX with the cleanup. So I expect this week that we'll know more about what the cause was.
Impact for commuters?
Serious impact. Now, obviously, this was a freight train, so there were no passengers impacted yesterday. But the MARC train, the Maryland Commuter Rail, and Amtrak, the line from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, shares that track with CSX. And so today we have seen some impacts on both the Maryland Commuter Rail and Amtrak.
In terms of the shipment of hazardous materials through the District of Columbia, is the city in a kind of a passive posture where when something happens and your people, from the first responders to the public safety crisis managers, have to sort of spring into action? Is it only then when you find out what's going through, or do you feel as though you're properly informed, well informed about?
Well, we have freight that runs through the city, and so we know on any given line there could be any number of materials. And I remember many years ago, attending a press conference after something happened in Maryland during the Glendenning years, and he made what I thought for him was a little bit of a caustic, or I don't want to say snide, but he made a reference to CSX by saying something like, our alleged partners from CSX, and this was at a press conference, our supposed partners from CSX. How do you gauge that relationship? I mean, are they forthcoming in the way they should be? Are they cognizant of the things that could be concerns? I mean, how do you gauge that relationship? Well, what we're going to do this week is that we're going to find out how they respond to this particular incident, work with our federal partners, and work with us. My experience with CSX has been limited, but we know that there have been any number of issues that have happened around us. So we expect the federal agencies to make sure we get the answers that we need.
The phone lines open this Monday as we talk one-on-one for the hour with D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. With us to the top of the hour, many of you will see half an hour on TV now, and you can pick up, as always, the second half hour online at a time of your choosing on our blog. It's news8newstalk.com. And, of course, we welcome your calls. We would love to have you be part of the conversation here today with D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. We've already posted the number to the bottom of the screen, so dial in now, or write the number down, dial in a couple moments. The sooner you dial in, though, the better the odds are we can take your call. And as I say, we'd love to make you part of the conversation, have your questions or your concerns addressed directly by the mayor. 703-387-1020 is the number. We'll go to the phones as your questions and comments come in. Can you talk to us, Mayor, about the homeless shelter plan that you have sent to the council and that residents across the city are looking at? A goal that I think people embrace and understand, to have quality homeless shelter opportunities, particularly for families, particularly when there are young people, children, who, through no fault of their own, and through the parents, maybe no fault of their own either, right? But in a wealthy city, in a wealthy nation, we hate to think of kids having housing insecurity.
Absolutely.
As it relates to the particulars, though, what do you want to say to residents who are concerned about siting of, we'll talk about cost in a moment, in terms of the process your team went through with regard to siting? What do you want people to know?
Well, what I want people to know is I was charged with closing DC General, and many people will know that that's a site that we used to use as a hospital, and for the last several years, many years, it's been used as a family homeless shelter. And we all know that it's too big, it's too old, and it's not safe enough to house our families. And so we have engaged in the last year plus on coming up with a plan to close DC General and to create smaller short-term family housing facilities, no more than 50 units, that we can properly build, construct, and service and provide the services needed, and to place those facilities in neighborhoods all over the District of Columbia. We know that we have an obligation by law and also by our values to house people that present to the government as homeless during hyperthermia season. And especially families, we want to make sure they're in a setting that's short term when they're having an emergency that will allow them to get on their way. So we put out an RFP like we do for many things. We asked for people to submit properties that met our specifications, no more than 50 units, a certain square footage, and we located places all over the city.
So if I live in a neighborhood where one of these sites has been identified as being around the corner, down the street, 2 blocks over, whatever,
sure,
and I'm thinking, gee, I don't mind if you're in my ward, but I'd love it if you were farther from my house.
Sure.
Do you quarrel with that view? And as a process matter, do you get why people would want to know sort of what other sites in their ward were considered? Because, you know, depending on your values, you'd rather it be somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely, and we very definitely have shared that information with the community. So any community member could go on our website at homewarddc.dc.gov and find all of that information about sites that were considered.
Do you still feel as good about the plan today as you did the day you sent it? Is this the plan you want your colleagues on the council to say yes to?
I will tell you this, Bruce. Closing DC General is probably the hardest thing that I'll do as mayor, and it's also something that residents charge me to do as mayor. It's an expensive proposition. DC General is an expensive proposition, and it's an ineffective one.
Sorry to interrupt, but having young people grow up in a chaotic crisis environment where they don't feel like the world loves them enough for them to have a roof over their head, that's expensive.
That's also expensive. So we know we already spend just $17 million a year operating DC General. We can't persist with DC General like it is, so we'll have to spend another $50 million to recreate DC General, and then we would still end up with a big chaotic homeless shelter that nobody agrees is the way to go. The council, with me, we submitted legislation in the fall that limited the number of units that we could have for DC General to 50 units, and also helped us transform our homeless services center. So the idea is that we're going to fix the system and prevent more families from going into the system in the first place. One of the numbers we're very proud of is that we prevented 1,000 people from going into homelessness with preventive services. Now we still have a long way to go, but we see the changes starting to have an impact. So I feel very good that we presented to the council and to the community a citywide solution that says homelessness, this just isn't a problem for one part of the city, but is a part, but every part of the city should have a role in solving the family homeless
And it's not just a cold weather
It's not
problem.
just a cold weather problem.
To the extent that you and taxpayers want every dollar to go as far as it can go,
yes,
and facing the reality that in a booming city like the district, where everything is so expensive and seems to get more so
yes,
by the year,
yes,
to locate facilities in some areas brings a higher price tag than in other. Now, I'm not advocating for a moment that we continue to sort of dump on the places that perceive that they've always been dumped on, but I think it's worthy of a discussion about the reality that to locate here instead of here will cost more for the same thing. You've tackled that in this plan. Can you talk about it?
Well, sure. And like I said, I think that this is a case, and a cynic might say that if I had suggested building all of these facilities in just one ward of the city, it would have floated through the council by now. Now, I hate to think that that would be true, because people from every ward and every background have expressed the value to me that we have to close D.C. General. We want dignified facilities, and we want to be a part of the solution. So that's what we're moving forward in doing.
Mayor Bowser, stand by for just a moment if you would. We'll take a break here. Back with much more of our conversation with and your phone calls for D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser here on News Talk. Robert, you'll be first. Stay on line 1.